Hey everybody, welcome to Move to Combat. This episode with 100% less Kenny. Next episode with 100% more Kenny. We're sorry, he couldn't make it this week. He's on vacation, and the rest of us are stuck here filling in for him. How wonderful.
The rest of us are filling in for him?
Yes.
Wouldn't that imply that we...
I am
you've got to fill in for him now.
I've got to do my job and be entertaining? What? I can't do that.
Oh, yeah, so it must be so hard to be you.
So, here's our host, Haley,
hey, what's
who's
up,
our
you
only
guys?
host this week, and the official host of the podcast, so that's all that really matters. Kenny's the co-host.
No, this is Kenny and I's show, and your show, and we all do it together, so there's no one of us that means more than the other.
But some of us are more equal than others. Anyway, what are we talking about today, aside from the absence of Kenny?
This week is, if you didn't know, pre-release week.
What?
It's a big week in the Magic world because this is going to be our first chance to play with the new stuff. So what we have prepared for you this week is a little breakdown of like the new stuff that's going to be in it, how a pre-release works if you've never played in one before, need a refresher, etc. And then also we're going to be going over like a mini strategy guide. So we picked out about 20 cards from the new set to look out for this weekend and hopefully make your pre-release better.
Yeah, and if you're a new player, the pre-release is a perfect time to join to get your Magic chops in order, and the core set is a perfect set to do it with.
Yeah, I don't think there's a more perfect time for a new player to be playing in a bigger event, just because.
Now, of course, you're brand new, you don't even know how to play. You need to
Unless
you need
you're
to do
brand new
that
and
first.
you don't even know how to play.
You need to know how to play first. But
yeah,
if you're newish to the game, great time.
Yeah, so you need some basic level of skills to be able to play in a pre-release. You have to know the foundations of playing the game. But the core sets are specifically built for new players to come in and play. They hold a lot of the core mechanic stuff. They hold a lot of the staple cards that you're going to see a lot. Most of the staples that you'll see throughout the entire year, so they're not wasting slots printing them in the bigger sets because they tend to make those more flavorful. And then it's also pre-release, which is a Magic player's Christmas, because you get to play with all the new cards a week before they come out, which is just really fun.
Yeah, and you get a lot of games in for practice, so it's always good.
Usually a minimum of 3 or 4, and people are always willing to play with you. Plus, it helps build your deck build up your deck building skills.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So, what are we going to talk about first about the new pre-release? Next pre-release?
So first, we should probably discuss for newer players or just like a refresher for people who haven't played in a while, what the pre-release is, how it works, where do you find them, what do you bring to them. So pre-release, as we've mentioned, it starts the week before the new set comes out. It's your first chance to play with all the new cards. What'll happen is you'll go into your local game store, because almost all of them host them if they have a WPN account, which is the Wizards Play Network. So you'll get 6 packs of the new set, and you'll have about an hour to build a 40-card deck of all the new cards to be able to play with. So typically you're going to want about 16 to 18 lands in there. And it's continuous build format, so throughout the entire day, all of the cards you open up are yours to play with. So that means you get to build this 40-card deck however you want. You can build multiple 40-card decks. You can switch it out if you don't like the colors you're playing with. You can build any deck you can possibly think of that you can with the cards that you open, which is really cool.
Yep, and you can rebuild your deck between sets, right?
Correct. So yeah, what we mean by continuous build is the fact that like in between your matches, you can build a completely new deck. So say round 1 you're playing like a mono red deck and you learn that you actually hate mono red. You can add another color to it, you can play another color entirely, and we say that you should probably do this in between matches just because if you're doing it in between games, you only have 50 minutes for a round. And
that's really unfair to the other player, and it's also kind of a jerk move. So.
Yeah, so if you're sitting there for like 20 minutes trying to rearrange your deck, you're wasting all of your game time.
Right.
A notable thing, too, about building your decks like this is if you open up more than 4 of one card, you can use as many cards as you want, like, in it. So say you open up 5 of a common creature, you can use all 5 of those in your deck if you really like them.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so it's just a really, really good deck building exercise. It's a good way to explore the new cards from the new set. Additionally, what do you bring to a pre-release? Well,
first of all, take a shower.
That's not what you bring, but yes, we can discuss etiquette too. But what you should bring to a pre-release, typically you're gonna want to bring some dice, so you've got a way to keep track of counters, life totals. A lot of people bring card sleeves. You're not necessarily required to, at least at a pre-release. But it is recommended just because it makes life easier. You know which cards are yours.
Are there any two-sided cards in Core 2020?
No, there are not any two-sided cards.
All right.
Some people like bringing a play mat so they can play on it. Bringing like some sort of drink or snacks are really good because chances are you're going to be sitting there for like a minimum of 4 to 5 hours, depending on how many rounds it is, how long each round takes. You're looking at a 4 to 5 hour period of time, so snacks are key. But yes, pre-release etiquette. Let's talk about that for a second since you brought up taking a shower.
Take a shower.
Yes, please take a shower. Not to be rude, but this happens more often than you think. People don't shower before they come to pre-release. They don't put on deodorant. You're in a crowded room full of people. It gets hot. It gets sweaty. Please take a shower. Please put on deodorant. Practice good hygiene. Everybody will thank you for it later.
Yep. And always be a good sport when you play.
Yes, absolutely.
Accept losses graciously. Accept victories graciously. And if there's a draw, flip the table over.
No, do not flip the table under any circumstances. Yeah, we talked about this. If you're new here and you didn't catch this, we'll reiterate. But one of the things that we've talked about last time pre-release came around is being a good sport. Magic is a place that we all get together to play a game that we love. So you should make it as welcoming as a community as you want it to be. Everybody is responsible for making it good. So, yeah, like James said, don't be a dick. Just don't be a dick.
In life as well as magic.
Yeah, in life too. You just be nice to people, be friendly, be kind. If somebody is being obnoxious or rambunctious, you don't say something to them or call a judge over the tournament organizer. That's what they're there for, to keep the environment under control.
If you have any questions at all while you're playing about anything, well, except for what is the meaning of life, please ask your judge. Do not be afraid to ask. It is better to ask a question and know a moment's shame than to not ask a question and know the shame of a lifetime.
Absolutely. That's what the judges and tournament organizers are there for. In 99% of the cases, they want to help you.
Exactly.
That's what they're there for.
That's why
job.
they became a judge. Like, ooh, yay, I get to answer a question.
Yeah. So, speaking personally, I'm not quite a judge yet. I'm a judgeling. I'm a rules advisor. You only become a judge or a rules advisor if you actually want to help people, because that's not just a job that you just do for fun. So the people who are there and doing this want to help you. They want to answer your questions. They want to help make you better Magic players. They want you to have fun. So at any point in time, if you're having issues with players, if you just have a question about how a card works or an interaction works, or even if you're not quite understanding something on a card, just call a judge over and ask the question. You're better off asking the question than sitting there stumbling like an idiot. You really are.
So, now that we've gone over what kind of player you should be and what a pre-release is, what about some new stuff that we should look forward to in this pre-release rules-wise? Okay,
so there are 2 major things that rules-wise that you should be aware of going into this. The biggest one is the new London Mulligan rule. This one is quite a change. It's not so different from the one that we currently have, but it definitely changes how things are going to work moving forward, because we've had the previous Mulligan rule for a while now. So how it's going to work, it's just changing how the game was. So I will read the rules text and then we'll discuss it a little further, just so you've got both sides of, you've got the exact how it works and then you've got the layman's term. So the new London Mulligan rule reads, each player draws a number of cards equal to their starting hand size, which is normally 7. A player who is dissatisfied with their initial hand may take a mulligan. First, the starting player declares whether they will take a mulligan, then each other player in turn order does the same. Once each player has made a declaration, all players who decide to take mulligans do so at the time. To take a mulligan, a player shuffles the cards in their hand back into the library, draws a new hand of cards equal to their starting hand size, then puts a number of those cards equal to the number of times that player has taken a mulligan on the bottom of their library in any order. Once a player chooses not to take a mulligan, the remaining cards become that player's opening hand, and that player may not take any further mulligans. This process is then repeated until no player takes a mulligan, and a player can take mulligans until their opening hand would be 0 cards.
So in layman's terms, you draw 7 cards, you don't like them, you draw 6 cards, you put you draw
No.
7, you draw 7
Yes.
cards again.
Yes.
Sorry, I flubbed up. You draw 7 cards again, you put one of the cards you don't like at the bottom of the deck.
If you decide you want to keep that hand.
If you decide you want to keep the hand. Otherwise, you pitch those cards, you draw 7 more cards, then you pitch 2 cards at the bottom of the deck if you don't like them. So you're progressively making your hand smaller, just as it was before with the mulligan rule, but you kind of get a quasi-scry, I guess, is the best way to explain it.
So what it does is, the way the old mulligan rule worked was every time you mulliganed, you would draw 1 less card, and then once you decide you kept a hand, you would get to scry and fix your first draw, because you're losing card advantage by starting with a smaller hand. So the way that this London Mulligan works is you get to see the full 7 that you would be drawing normally, and you get to pick and choose which cards you would rather keep in your hand if you mulligan. So instead of just drawing up to 6, you get to draw the full 7, and then if that's a better 7 cards, you get to go, okay, well, this has 4 lands in it, and I don't need all 4 of those lands because I'm playing a faster deck, so I'll put one of these lands at the bottom of my deck. Right. It does take away the scry that we used to have, though, so that'll be a little bit of a change, so you're not fixing your draw anymore, but you are keeping the better hand.
But it is nice to be able to pick and choose what part of your hand you're actually...
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be interesting because that officially starts on Friday.
I actually really like the London Mulligan rule. I'm seem to be alone in that opinion, but
here's the thing. I think it's very good for certain things, but I don't think it's good for everything.
Right.
So for standard, it's probably going to be pretty okay in standard. It kind of, in my opinion, makes red decks a little bit better because if red decks have to mulligan, they just mulligan until they find a better hand for themselves, and then they can pitch lands or do whatever they gotta do. But I don't think it'll have that much of an effect on standard. What is the concerning part of it, and they said they've tested it, so you gotta have a little bit of faith in Wizards of the Coast R&D. However, the concern comes in more of the modern sets and the older sets. Right. Because if you're playing a combo deck where you only need 2 or 3 cards, you just mulligan until you find those 2 or 3 cards. So we'll have to see what happens. But as far as standard and limited formats go, I don't think it's going to be that big of an issue. And it's not a super huge change. So I think it'll be pretty easy for people to grasp. I know that a lot of local game stores, at least in our area, have implemented this rule already to get people ready for it and used to it. So they started doing the London Mulligan rule a few weeks ago to get people practicing it and using it. So London Mulligan rule, that's how it works. That'll be implemented starting Friday at this pre-release. Next thing we're going to go over is protection. Now, protection is an older mechanic that players who've been playing for a while have probably seen, or if you play Commander a lot, you've probably seen it at some point in time. However, it's being reintroduced into Standard, and it's on probation to becoming an evergreen word again. It used to be, but it's not anymore. So basically, When something has protection, it usually reads like this card has protection from some sort of thing. It's usually like a color, or creatures, or a player, but it'll state specifically what it has protection from on the card, and it is a static ability, so it's constantly checking to see if this effect is in play. So, for example, if a card has protection from black, that creature cannot be blocked, targeted, dealt damage, or enchanted by anything that's black. So if you swing with it and they have a black creature, they can't block with the black creature because you have protection from black. If they have a black removal spell, they cannot remove your creature with that black removal spell. They can't deal damage to it. And it cannot be enchanted with any sort of enchantment that says enchant creature. Basically any effect that comes from the thing it has protection from, it can't touch it. So it's pretty easy to follow in terms of how it works, but it is new, so it's worth talking about again.
Cool.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what this does to Standard, I think.
I haven't seen the word protection since 4th edition. So I'm pretty stoked about seeing that come back.
It's been around since then, but it has disappeared into the background for a little while, at least as far as Standard goes. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when it's reintroduced, because they do have quite a bit of stuff that gives things protection in this set. So it'll be interesting, I think.
All right, so now I guess we should talk about the important things. What cards to look out for?
Yes. So what we have put together for you this week is we've taken about 20 cards, all in the common and uncommon slots. We've taken 2 non-creature spells and 2 creatures in each of the 5 colors to give you something to look out for and potentially help make your deck better. So starting with white, we have the 2 non-creature spells are Pacifism and God's Willing. Pacifism is a 2-drop, 1 generic, 1 white for an enchantment that says enchant creature. An enchanted creature can't attack or block. This is a really good card to look out for because it's pseudo removal in white. So instead of just completely destroying a creature, you're nullifying it because it can no longer attack or block. So this is something you're going to want to enchant your opponent's creatures with. And their creature just dies, more or less. It's still in the field, they can still use it for effects. For example, if they have to sacrifice another creature, or if that card has like some sort of ability where you pay mana and you tap it to activate a certain ability, they'll still be able to do that. However, it does not impede your ability to attack them anymore. Next up, God's Willing is a 1 white instant. It says target creature you control gains protection from the color of your choice until end of turn, and then you get to scry 1. So this essentially does a few things. It's in the uncommon slot, so you're not going to see as many of them, but it is a good card to pick up because you can protect one of your creatures from anything that's happening. You just give it protection from a certain color, so if they go to target it with some sort of removal spell, you give it protection from the color that the removal spell is, they no longer can target it. If you give it, say they have all black creatures, you can give it pro-black and then swing in and get guaranteed damage, and it also gives you that scry 1, which is really nice. Moving on to creatures, we have sort of a bomb-ish card, and what we mean by bomb is typically you're going to want a couple of these in your deck. It's a high-end finisher card that allows you to basically put it on the field and say, deal with this or die. Herald of the Sun is a 6-drop. It's 4 generic and 2 white for a 4/4 flying angel, and it has an ability that says pay 3 generic and 1 white, and you can put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature with flying. If you're in white or blue, chances of you having creatures with flying is pretty good, because they are predominantly a lot of flyers in those 2 colors. So not only is this guy a 4/4 flyer, which is really hard, flying is super evasive because it can only be blocked by creatures with flying or reach, so if they don't have those, they can't block it. 4 is a lot of damage to be dealing on a body. And then additionally, it's got 4 toughness, so a lot of your common removal spells aren't going to be able to hit it right out the gate. So like any sort of like lightning strikes that deals 3 damage to it isn't going to kill it just straight out. Plus, it's like a nice mana sink for later in the game, so if you don't have a lot of other stuff to do, you can pay that 4 mana for that ability and put a +1/+1 counter on another target creature with flying. So if you have more flyers, it makes your other flyers bigger and makes them bigger threats. And that's in the uncommon slot, so you won't see it as often, but it's likely that you could see one. And then in the common slot, we have Battalion Foot Soldier. It's a 3-drop. It's 2 generic and 1 white for a 2/2 human soldier. And when it enters the battlefield, you may search your library for any number of cards named Battalion Foot Soldier, reveal them, and put them into your hand, then shuffle your library. This is nice because he replaces himself in your hand. He basically has what we call a Squadron Hawk effect, which is one of the first creatures that did this ability. So you play him and you are able to search your library for more of them. And it's really good because he's in the common slot, so the chances of you seeing a lot of them are more likely. And if you happen to have, this is a prime example of like, if you end up with 5 of them in your sealed pool, well, great, now you can put all 5 in, and you don't have to search for all of them at once, so you can play one, search for one, keep that in your hand, and then if you want to keep information from your opponent, then you can play another one and search for one more, and play one and search for one more, unless you're really desperate for creatures. Then you can play one and search for the other 3 in your deck and put all those in your hand at once. So it's a really good value for what you're doing, especially in like a limited setting. Mm-hmm. Moving on to blue, 2 spells we have for you. One is Captivating Gyre. It's a 6-drop sorcery for 4 generic and 2 blue. It is in the uncommon slot, and it returns up to 3 target creatures to their owner's hands. This is kind of blue's version of a removal spell. Blue doesn't have a lot of things that destroy creatures. Instead, it bounces them back to their owner's hand, so it removes them from the field temporarily and causes their owners to have to recast them. This is really good because it can be a potential finisher. So if you're getting like more into a late game and they have 3 creatures on the field, you can bounce all 3 of those creatures back up and swing for lethal during your turn. This is also, like, if their field is just getting out of control and you don't have something that you can do about it, you can return 3 of their creatures to their hand to have to force them to recast them, so it buys you extra turns. And then additionally, you also have Unsummon, which is a 1 blue spell, and it's in the common slot, and it's an instant, and it returns target creature to its owner's hand. So it's similar in what it does to Captivating Gyre, except it's targeting one thing, and it is at instant speed. So if they go to swing at you with something really big, you just unsummon it to their hand. Alternatively, if you have something like a really good bomb on the field, and they go to kill it with a kill spell, well then you just bounce it back to your hand, and then you can recast it, so you've effectively saved it from dying. So you still have a way to get it back. Mm-hmm. Moving on to the blue creatures, we have Boreal Elemental. It's a 5-drop, 3/4. It's 4 generic, 1 blue. For a common elemental creature with flying, and spells your opponents cast that target it costs 2 additional generic mana to cast. So once again, it's a 3/4 flyer. It's really good with the evasion. It's got a larger toughness, so it doesn't die instantly to a lot of the damage kill spells. And then he also helps protect himself a little bit because it costs 2 more generic mana to target him. So if they've got, say, like some sort of like shock in their hand, that's a 1 red and it deals 2 damage, now that shock costs 3 mana to cast. And it's not killing him. So it just makes him harder to target. He's far more evasive. He's got the blue flyer thing going on, which is really good. So he just gives you a lot of value, and he's in the common slot, so you probably will see a few of him. I understand that he's 5 mana, but limited in itself is a slower format, so it'll be easier to be able to cast him. And he does help protect himself, so paying the extra mana or 2 to cast him, well, they have to pay 2 extra mana to target him. Additionally, you've got another blue common, Frostlinks. It's a 3-drop, 2/2. It's 2 generic and 1 blue for an elemental cat, and when he enters the battlefield, you tap target creature and opponent controls, and that creature doesn't untap during its controller's next untap step. So this is a really good way to slow down your opponent, and if they've got a big bomb on the field, it freezes it down for a turn, so it buys you extra turns to find an answer to be able to deal with that bomb.
Okay.
In black, we have some prime removal, as black is typically known for. You have Murder. It is 3 mana, it's 1 generic and 2 black for an instant, and it's destroy target creature. In the common slot, just, I don't like that, kill it.
Mm-hmm.
So, it doesn't get much better than that in terms of removal, because it just hands down kills something. But it's really good because there's no other, like, specifications on it. It's not like destroy target creature that's white, or destroy target creature that's converted mana cost 4 or less, or something like that. It's just, you have a big bomb, kill it. And also in black, you've got Soul Savage. Soul Salvage. It's a 3-drop sorcery. It's 2 generic and 1 black. And you get to return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. Something that's really important when you're playing in such a limited format where you only have 40 cards to work with, or you have about 40 cards to work with, is being able to protect your creatures and or get them back if they die. So this is also in the common slot, so you're going to see a few of them. Whereas like blue is more about protecting what you have and being able to buy yourself extra turns, bouncing stuff back up to your hand, bouncing their stuff back up to their hand to protect your stuff. Soul Salvage, with Soul Salvage, black doesn't care if your stuff dies, so let them waste your removal on stuff, because you can just get it right back to your hand. So you're not wasting what you're doing. You're wasting their cards for stuff that you're going to be able to get back later, which is really good in the limited format.
Definitely.
Moving on to creatures, you have Bloodthirsty Aerialist in the uncommon slot. It's a 3-drop, it's 1 generic, and 2 black for a 2/3 flying vampire rogue. And whenever you gain life, you get to put a +1/+1 counter on it. So black and white in particular are known for life gain. So this is just a really good way to make your life gain go that much farther. So if you've got any sort of life linkers or something, he just keeps getting bigger. And the fact that he's a flyer makes him evasive. So if you're just making a flyer bigger and bigger and they've got nothing to deal with flyers or nothing to deal with it, not only are you gaining life, which is making yourself harder to kill, you're swinging for more in the air every time that you gain that life. So it's a really good value all the way around. And it is an uncommon, so you're not going to see it as often, but it's something that's really good to keep in mind. As far as like a sort of black bomb goes, we have Feral Abomination. It is a 6-drop, 5/5. It's 5 generic and 1 black for a Thrall. It's just a 5/5 with Death Touch.
It's awesome that it's a Thrall. I haven't seen that since like Empires.
Yeah. Thralls have been around, but they're a little like far and few between.
Yeah.
It's just one of those like offhand creature types.
Yeah.
But the fact that he's a 5/5 Death Toucher is insanely good because he's really big. He's got a big body and a big butt. And the Death Touch says that any amount of damage he's dealing is enough to destroy it. So the fact that he's bigger than a lot of all the little stuff, he's probably killing whatever he's blocking to begin with. But is making it so he can also kill, if they've got a bigger bomb, it's definitely going to die. So, and it also makes them think twice about what they're going to swing into you. And it's a bigger threat. It makes them think twice about what they're going to block him with. Because he's a 5/5, so you can only take up to 4 hits from him. But they're going to have to block it with something. But anything that they block it with is going to die. It's just an added layer of strategy. Moving on to red, we have Chandra's Outrage. It is a 4-drop instant. It's 2 generic and 2 red. It's in the common slot. Chandra's Outrage deals 4 damage to target creature and 2 damage to that creature's controller. So this is pretty common of what you're going to see in terms of a red removal spell. Red typically deals damage as opposed to just destroying. But this one, I think, is particularly good because it deals 4 damage to target creature, which hits a lot of your bigger stuff. So like the flyers that we talked about earlier. It just kills something bigger, but additionally, it's also doing damage to that creature's controller. So it's almost like a 2-for-1 in one spell. So you're killing most creatures that you're probably going to see on the board, and you're still dealing damage to your opponent's life total, which is ultimately how you win the game. Flame Sweep is also really good. It's in the uncommon slot, so you're not going to see as much of it, but it's a 3-drop instant. It's 2 generic and 1 red, and it deals 2 damage to each creature for creatures, except for creatures you control with flying. So it's potentially a sweeper. And that's really good because it's an instant, but it's definitely an early game sweeper, so when you're dealing with a pre-release, you're dealing with a lot of aggro decks, because the format is limited, so you want to be able to kill your opponents. So you're going to see a lot of little creatures. It's a bonus if you're playing like a red-blue deck and you have flyers, so it's not dealing damage to your stuff as well, but it's a really good way to clear the board out like early game and buy yourself a few extra turns. Moving on to red creatures, in the uncommon slot we have Dragon Mage. It is a 7-drop, but this is kind of a bomb. So it's a 7-drop, it's 5 generic and 2 red for a 5/5 flyer, which, once again, it's a 5/5 flyer, super evasive. And whenever he deals combat damage to a player, each player discards their hand, then draws 7 cards.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. So if you have an opponent that's going through their deck relatively quickly, when you can't draw cards anymore, you lose the game. So the fact, like, yes, I understand that, both players are discarding their hand and then drawing 7 cards, but one, this is a refill for you. So if you had no cards in hand and this was like your bomb that you're dropping is like your top deck mode bomb, now you're getting 7 cards to your hand, which is awesome. But also you're starting to like help mill your opponent out, so you're giving them less and less cards to work with.
Can I point out something funny?
Yes.
So in the previous slide, it says, I have calculated that a dragon in flight in a single strafing run can cover an area of Thaddeus the Clever, last words, right?
Yeah.
And in this card it says, yes, it's huge and strong and breathes fire, but we're smart, Dad at the wise, last words. So it's like every dragon card gonna have somebody's last words on it from,
yes.
from now on.
Yes.
I just thought that was funny.
Well, when you're dealing with fire, a lot of the words are the last words. Because you're dealing with fire. That's red, is just burn it with fire. It's their motto.
So Pack Mastiff is pretty cool.
Yeah, Pack Mastiff is pretty cool. He is in the common slot, so he's probably going to be easier to see. He is a 2-drop, 1 generic and 1 red for a 2/2 hound. So he's what we call a bear with abilities. His ability says he's if you pay 2 mana, 1 generic and 1 red, each creature you control named Pack Mastiff gets +1/+0 until end of turn. So what we mean by a bear is like a 2-drop 2/2. It's usually just something that's giving you the value for what you're paying for it. But this has an additional ability, and it's better than your typical bear with a buff, because this says each creature you control named Pack Mastiff. So if you've got 3 of them, and you're paying that 2 mana, each one of them is getting +1/+0 until end of turn.
Pretty cool.
So this is another case of like having 5 copies of a common card. If you have all of the copies of this common card, it gives you more benefit because you're paying that 2 mana to buff all of your Pack Mastiffs, not just one.
Definitely.
So that's what makes it pretty good in the red color.
Yeah.
Moving on to green.
Green.
Now, when you're dealing with green, your removal spells get a little bit different as well. So green doesn't typically have, like, your destroy target creature. A lot of what green has is you're dealing damage to something, or you're dealing damage equal to, like, the power or toughness of one of your creatures, or you're fighting, which means you're taking one of your creatures and one of their creatures, and they're dealing damage to each other. So we get a really cool reprint in M20. I personally am a fan of this card. It's called Rabbit Bite. It's a 2-drop. It's 1 generic and 1 green for a sorcery. This target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control.
Very
so
cool.
It's like a one-sided fight.
Mm-hmm.
So I take my biggest thing and kill whatever I don't like on your side of the field. It's just really good value. If you've got a lot of good bombs in your deck, if you're playing green, which if you're playing green, you probably have some good bombs in your deck, because green is known for big and stompy, you're killing their bombs with this. And this also helps green deal with flyers as well. So green's got stuff with reach, but it doesn't have any flyers. So if you've got something big on the ground, this is another way that you can kill their flyers and make them less evasive, because you're just dealing damage to them. It doesn't happen in an actual combat phase. Also, with green, you've got this card called Overcome. It's a 5-drop. It's 3 generic and 2 green for a sorcery. And creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain trample until end of turn. So this is a really good finisher in green. It's kind of what green wants to do. So this is all of your creatures are getting +2/+2 and trample deals the excess damage over their blockers. So this is a really good way to finish out the game, or alternatively to help whittle their field down. So if they have a really big field that you can't deal with, this is a pretty decent deal with my stuff or die card. This forces blockers. It forces them to have answers when you play this. The only thing I wish is that it was like some sort of instant speed combat trick, because that would be really cool.
Yeah.
But because this being a sorcery speed, it gives them a chance to respond to it as well.
Right.
But it's still a really good card in green. It's good finisher, good thing to look out for. And in the creatures, we have the bomb, Howling Giant. He is a 7-drop, 5 generic, and 2 green for a 5/5 giant druid with reach, but also, when he enters the battlefield, you create 2/2 green wolf creature tokens. So you're getting 9 power for 7 mana, which is pretty good, but you're getting 9 power across 3 bodies. So this is building you a field if you didn't have one. Additionally, it's a 5/5 with reach, so it's hitting a lot of the flyers. You can block them and probably not die to a good chunk of them with this guy. And then he gives you little guys on the ground. So this can definitely change the tide of a game pretty quickly. If you had no field and they had stuff like the big flyers or little guys on the ground, well, now you've got a way to compete with them. And you did it with 1 card as opposed to 3 or 4, which is always a good thing. And then, last but not least, you've got Sedge Scorpion. It's a 1 green, 1/1 Death Toucher in the common slot. This is a pseudo removal spell, and it's also like a turn 1, hey, be careful, I have Death Touch. He's just a 1/1, so he's a little guy, but he's also a 1/1 with Death Touch. This 1/1 with Death Touch could kill that 5/5 with reach. Easily, hands down. So it just makes him good value, and he's in the common slot, so you'll probably see a few of them. And that's what we have for you as far as like some cards to look out for go and strategy wise.
Cool.
Yeah. So I don't know about you, but I'm really excited for this.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get a box, but I haven't done it yet. Gotta do that.
Yeah, I think just like we talked about all the spoilers last week, I think Core 2020 is shaping up to be a pretty decent set.
Mm-hmm.
I think they're following kind of the same thing where there is some pretty powerful stuff in it, but nothing is like crazy overpowered, or the stuff that everything has checks and balances.
I'm still hyped about that bird wizard we talked about from last week.
Bird wizard.
I want that bird wizard.
Yeah, bird wizard's pretty cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think this is going to be a lot of fun. And pre-releases should always be fun for everybody. Like I said, you get to play with the cards a week early. They're not even out yet, and you get to play with them.
Yeah. So let us know how your pre-list goes by tweeting us back or emailing us or commenting on the next show.
Yeah. And I hope you guys all have a good holiday. and you enjoy the fireworks, you enjoy your friends, you enjoy your family, and you enjoy pre-release.
Exactly. The most important thing, obviously, being the pre-release.
Obviously.
No, I'm just joking.
Just take all the friends that you're partying with for the 4th of July and take them to your local game store. Take the fireworks to the local game store.
What are we talking about next week? Do we have a topic yet?
To be determined when Kenny gets back from vacation.
Okay.
When we
All
have
right.
100% more Kenny here with us.
Well, you can catch us next week here at Move to Combat at Twitch TV/Move to Combat. You can email us at movetocombatpodcast@gmail.com or tweet us at @tocombat. Remember, we're here every Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you like our intro and outro music, you can check out soundcloud.com/James Scheib. That's JamesShaieb. That's me, where you can download our intro song, outro song, and any other song that you find interesting on that page. Also, if you like role-playing games, you can check out our sister podcast, Brave Yet Stupid, which is on Saturdays at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So thanks everybody for watching, and we'll hope to see you next time.
Yeah, bye guys.